Well, firstly, it's the best job in government, and it's something that I really, really enjoy. And being a member of Parliament for the last 11 years, I've worked with many communities, from the Chinese community to the Greek community to the Arabic community, right across my own electorate and right across Sydney for that matter. This is an extension of the great work we've done in terms of helping and helping represent those communities. And I think it's the ability of taking everything that I've learned in the last 10 years and taking that to the next level. And many of the community leaders that I've known for a long time, religious leaders, community groups that I've known for a long time, I'm able to continue working with them, this time in the executive government. I was born and bred in my local area, in the southern suburbs of Sydney, and I got involved in politics over a set of cricket nets, where I lobbied very hard the local council to upgrade a lot of the sporting amenities in the local park that I live down the road today of. And I got an interest in politics, and I got an interest in being able to help communities grow and being able to I think fight for change and improvements of the local community. So I got an interest in politics that way. I've lived in my area all my life. I went to school locally, and I'm married to a school teacher, and together we're raising 2 children. And we're very active in our local community, active in Lions and Rotary clubs, and active in the school PNC, and have been for a very long time. Yeah, well, certainly as Minister for Multiculturalism and Minister for Seniors, I feel I'm not presented with challenges, but more opportunities. And what we've seen in the last 2 years is through Multicultural New South Wales, my agency, where we've been able to help community groups grow and continue to grow, and obviously help them through this pandemic. We've also seen money towards multicultural media, and multicultural media in itself is such an important tool out there for any level of government, just like you guys. Because it's important that, as governments, we get our messages across in terms of keeping the community safe and ensuring the government's there listening as well. And I think over the last 2 years, as we're, particularly now as we're coming out of this pandemic, I think these opportunities to help see my passion, want to build a strong and harmonious multicultural society by helping our community groups as we come out of this pandemic. And many of our groups and associations are wanting now to hold those annual events and hold those annual festivals, which the government's there to support. And I'm going to see our community groups continue helping their own communities. And what we saw over the pandemic is a lot of programs and funding in place to help community groups, to help their members and their families and their communities during the pandemic with, home isolation programs, food and wellbeing checks, and now that we're coming out of this pandemic, that they'll, instead of wanting to meet online or stay at home, that they're wanting to have their events, and they want to have those events, which is really important because we want to make sure that our communities are out and about. Yeah, well, I think everything's a priority, and certainly as Minister for Multiculturalism and Minister for Seniors, my role is to ensure that no community is left behind, no one is left behind. And certainly we saw that when I took over as Minister. One of the very first things we did was ensure that, rapid antigen testing kits, RATs, were given to as many community groups as possible, particularly those that are vulnerable and disadvantaged. Since I've taken over as Minister, we've seen a real escalation of translation of services and materials that governments are doing to ensure that they're translated into over 19 different languages and sent out to community groups as quickly as possible. We've had online forums on a continued basis. We've had visits to different community groups right throughout the state. To ensure that people are being listened and community groups are being listened and are able to, as Minister, voice their concerns and issues and concerns so that we can take it to all levels of government. Well, we're going to continue helping our Ukraine community, and a very special and important community. Refugees certainly refugees have certainly entered Australia, and they'll continue to enter Australia. And we welcome that. We've increased the threshold over and above the humanitarian cap, and certainly the Premier has written to the Prime Minister about wanting to, welcome more refugees from Ukraine into the country. We will provide all the help and all the necessary help that they need. Let it be transport, where we announced on the weekend assisted transport for those refugees coming into our country, for them to go to school or medical appointments or look for employment. And I'm passionate about that. And one of the reasons why I want to help, and I want to see help as many refugees as possible, is because they've come from war-torn countries like Ukraine, and they've come to Australia for a new beginning and a new start. And this assistance goes a long way in kickstarting them and their future here in Australia. We obviously want to play an important role in that, and the federal government can't always help in different areas, so we will certainly help where we can and do more over and above more than any other state government has ever done before. Yeah, as we're coming out of the pandemic, international students will be welcomed with open arms here in Australia. We have, just like China, but India as well, we have a large cohort of students both here and have returned back and will return to Australia very soon, of wanting to study here and wanting to continue living here under the number of different visas there are. Certainly this pandemic has been difficult, and we haven't had the number of working visas from students or student visas issued because of this pandemic. Many of them have left and have arrived back home. But, we welcome them. Our country is built on multiculturalism. There are a lot of job vacancies out there. A lot of small, medium and large businesses are looking for the international students to take up some of those positions. We are built on multiculturalism. And, if you look at our success story, over the generations, 300 different ancestries, speaking over 200 different languages. This is a wonderful success story and a great example of just how a great country like Australia is built on multiculturalism. Well, I wouldn't say it's tense, and I think that's probably the wrong word to use. Australia and China have got a very good relationship. China is Australia's largest trading partner, and vice versa. There's been a signed free trade agreement signed in 6 years ago, I think, 5-6 years ago, and we welcome that. Mm-hmm. China plays an important role in the global economy, and so does Australia, and will continue doing so. We were one of the very first countries to recognise China. America was the first with Richard Nixon. The diplomatic relationships between both countries will continue to grow, and prosper. And certainly our trade with China will continue to grow, and we welcome that. The Chinese community here in New South Wales and across Australia have played a huge part in helping foster harmony and unity right across our nation. And as Minister for Multiculturalism, the Chinese community here in New South Wales should feel safe regardless of what is going on overseas. As we're coming out of the pandemic, we're going to see more Chinese New Year events. We're going to see mid-autumn festivals in September, October that the local councils right across Sydney and New South Wales are putting on. It's a great time of the year. I have a Chinese New Year event that I do locally. I didn't this year, but will next year. The Chinese community plays a great part in helping build a great country here in Australia.